The big news of the day, viewers, coming out of the Congress party, or at least disgruntled elements within the Congress party. Viewers, it's always a bad idea to mix sports with politics, but today I'm going to draw from a creating analogy. What do astute team managers do with a player who moves slowly in the field? In other words, a player who's a poor fielder. They hide them in the deep, in the outfield, where the ball may not travel often in his or her direction. Today, the managers of the Congress have a similar quandary to resolve. They have a bad performer in their midst. The poor performer, however, comes from a family that is synonymous with the Congress. You can't drop him at all from the team. The poor performer, you guessed it, is Rahul Gandhi. His credentials are allegedly so underwhelming that even a loyalist of the Gandhi family, like Ghulam Nabi Azad, who has served successive Congress presidents for 50 years almost, has today exited the Congress, expressing his deep disregard for the Congress scion Rahul Gandhi. Azad's observations are scathing, to say the least. Here is what he said. Rahul demolished existing consultative mechanisms in the Congress. His tearing up government ordinance shows how immature Rahul is. His childish behavior subverted the authority of the Prime Minister and the government. Recommendations lying in AICC storerooms for 9 years. The recommendations presumably relate to reform in the Congress and the Congress system. Under Rahul, Congress has lost 39 out of 49 assembly elections. Remote control model has demolished UPA's integrity. Sonia became a figurehead. Rahul and a coterie are taking all the decisions. It's quite a lengthy letter, viewers. We've taken excerpts from it. He's not alone. Several other Congress stalwarts today have also echoed Mr. Azad. They exited the party over the last few years, and all of them are singling out Rahul Gandhi's leadership or the coterie as the party's greatest liability, the coterie that props him. Listen to this.
If you read the Ghulam Nabi Azad letter and the letter I wrote in 2015, you will get lot of similarity. Everybody knows that Rahul Gandhi is an immature, whimsical and unpredictable leader. As a result, what happened? The people who were loyal to the party or who are loyal to the party, they are deserting one by one.
This situation was entirely avoidable, considering the fact that there have been many serious discussions. The understanding was not honored.
The Indian National Congress decision-making body is now coterie heavy, cabal heavy, and not well-meaning leaders heavy. The well-meaning leaders, people who give their blood and sweat, selflessly work for the Congress party, are being in a very systematic and a sinister manner being elbowed out of the party.
This was always on the cards, viewers. Mr. Azad was always looking at the exit door, especially after he became part of a group of dissenters within the Congress. They numbered 23. That number has been shrinking. Why is that number shrinking? That number is shrinking because this entire group feels that the Congress today is being mismanaged by Rahul Gandhi, and that he doesn't have it in him to take this party forward into the next decade and the next century. Viewers, it isn't as if, despite all these warnings, despite the senior leaders expressing themselves in different forums, even beyond the party, that the managers, the present managers, you can call them the coterie if you want, are listening. And neither are they willing to admit that there might be a problem. In fact, they say that those who have quit the Congress are feckless opportunists out to tug the family that gave them posts and made them household names. Now, viewers, it could be true. There might be some among them who are looking at greener pastures. But there remained a group, it's called the Group of 23, as I just told you, that did not leave the party when the opportunity presented itself. They stuck on and they kept sending messages, they kept speaking out, they kept writing letters to no avail. To say that Ghulam Nabi Azad is an opportunist might be stretching it a little too far in this context. For about a year and a half, 2 years, he's been making his views very public, very well known. So let's for a moment test this opportunism defense that the Congress is putting against the weight of hard facts. Hard facts, viewers, that you always get on India Upfront so that you find yourself getting closer to the truth. As you know, viewers, every good argument is based on a hard fact. So let's dissect Rahul's record. Under his leadership, the Congress lost resoundingly the 2019 Lok Sabha polls. Now this was on the back, viewers, of demonetization that caused or wreaked havoc economically, slowed down India's growth dramatically at a time when actually things were looking upwards. If there was an opportunity to win an election, that was the time. Rahul Gandhi blew it. In fact, viewers, the Congress party shrank even further. Subsequently, he lost 39 out of 49 assembly polls. The party was under his command. He was directing the campaign. He was strategizing the campaign. Rahul then goes on to lose in the family bastion of Amethi, prized Amethi. 39 years, the Congress was triumphant there, but he lost it. In 2014, Congress was ruling 14 states before Rahul took over. Currently, it's ruling only 2 states under Rahul's leadership or proxy leadership. Marginal coalition partners in 2 states under Rahul's leadership or tutelage, because, viewers, the Congress may say he's not the leader, it's his mother who's the leader. But then as an ordinary general secretary, one among half a dozen or so, how can he be leading, orchestrating, planning the Bharat Jodo Yatra? What standing, what locus standing does he actually have? Those are fundamental questions, viewers. Now, if Rahul's record, as the facts bear out, is so uninspiring as some Congress stalwarts now believe and are saying so openly, including Mr. Ghulam Nabi Azad in his letter, why haven't the party's managers acted by hiding Rahul somewhere? Ideally, he could be promoted up, a kind of non-playing captain, a chairman emeritus, if you please. This is a fundamental question. The other one, of course, is, will the Congress finally now admit Rahul's failure and start planning a contingency around him? Let's open this up, viewers. I want to go straight across first to Dr. Ranganathan and ask him to give his take on this whole unfolding situation. Dr. Ranganathan.
Good evening, Rahul. You know, it took him 50 years to simply swap one letter, B for H. Ghulam nahi, full stop, Azad. This is an inflection point for Congress. I hope it realizes it. This is the dynasty slave's tryst with destiny, so to speak. To paraphrase, a moment comes which comes but rarely in history, when the soul of a congressman long suppressed finds utterance. This is that moment, Rahul. Decades of bondage had conditioned and condemned him below deck in the hold where he spent his life heaving in the galleys. His back was whipped to smithereens, but he rode. Rivers of sweat gushed through his brows, but he rode. He couldn't remember what his surname meant anymore, but he rode. Muck and grime matted his hair, but he rode. He rode for the sake of his masters and their children and their children and their children. And he coaxed their ship from one port to next, but was never allowed to stretch his scrawny arms, leave alone step into the light or on land. Until one day, he couldn't take it anymore. And he chewed through the duct tape and he kneed his oar in two and he pried open his shackles and he jumped onto the menacing waters and swam. Without fear, without care, because a moment of freedom was worth more than decades of slavery. The waters were infested with sharks, but he didn't care. He had seen the land and the light behind it in his dreams and he swam towards it. The slave was free. Perhaps to start a slave dynasty of his own or to support a slave dynasty like Kapil Sibal has. In any case, he is at long last Azad. Finally, Rahul, a word about the mothership he deserted. The Congress is special. You need to understand that Rome wasn't built in a day, and so it follows that neither was, the Romans. Let me illustrate the damage with just one tiny example. Here are the last census indices of Amethi and Raebareli, the Nehru-Gandhi dynasty bastion for 60 years. People below poverty line, 54%. Households with electricity, 14%. Vaccinated children, 16%. Neonatal deaths, 83 per thousand. India averages 28. This is what dynasty has reduced Amethi and Raebareli to. So let it be known that if the Congress lies in tatters, it is because of Rahul Gandhi. Because as long as you have a party where a man in his 50s is still called the youth leader, where he can preside over one electoral defeat after another but is still evolving, where he can lie on an industrial scale but still remains the beacon of truth, where his compatriots are more meritorious but they will never upstage him, where he toils for an hour amid the poor and then takes a month's vacation to recover, where every morning he wakes up at night. As long as you have such a party, you will always have slave attrition. Rahul, just 10 seconds. I'm sure if Rahul was the captain of Titanic, he'd have steered the ship all night long in search of an iceberg to collide with. The day is not far when only Tehseen would be left supporting Rahul. Jai and Veeru, but not of Sholay, of Ram Gopal Verma ke Sholay.
Well, let me bring in Tehseen Poonawalla. Tehseen Poonawalla, look, astute managers recognize that there is a problem. Why are you, and like you, a coterie of well-wishers, not of the Congress but of the family, continuing to deny the party it deserves, a leader it deserves rather? Why are you doing this to the party? If you love the movement, the party, what it stands for, every other day we are reminded, and therefore I think Dr. Ranganathan quoted Nehru right up on top, that this party draws its inspiration from Nehru, then why don't you give it a modern day Nehru, not a modern day Nero? What's going on?
That's quoted by the Honorable Supreme Court about the Honorable Prime Minister. But let's come to the topic of the day. Good evening. Thank you for having me on the show. Good evening to all my fellow panelists and to all your viewers. Yeah, Anand, if tryst with destiny is that I am a Ghulam when I am Chief Minister, if tryst with destiny is I am the leader of opposition for the Congress and I keep getting from the BJP government Best Parliamentarian Award, while I allow, like a goalkeeper who's not guarding his goalpost, bill after bill that I say is unconstitutional, brought in by Mr. Modi to pass, and I don't even make an effort in Rajya Sabha to stop them. If my tryst with destiny is all for a bungalow, I have to forget everything that the Congress has done for me for 50 years. If my tryst with destiny is for 40 years, I'm on the CWC committee, the same CWC committee that I today in my letter criticized and say, look, this is not a democratic country. If my tryst with destiny is now that it makes me as Azad only because Rahul Gandhi did not extend one Rajya Sabha to me after 40 years giving the Congress giving me everything in the same Gandhi family, then I'd say that I'd rather be a Ghulam than be Azad. But here's the question. It is amazing to see today everyone, all and sundry, coming and saying, oh, Ghulam Nabi Azad was such a mass leader that he never won a Lok Sabha election from the now Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir, then erstwhile state of Jammu and Kashmir. He had to go to Maharashtra in Congress ways to win elections. Oh, today the BJP is also going to say Ghulam Nabi Azad, such a big leader. The Honorable Prime Minister cried buckets for him. The same Honorable Prime Minister cried in Parliament for him. Never shed one drop of tear for farmers who were martyred. But my limited question is this. When Nadda ji, and you can ask a research team to put the visuals out, was being pushed by Amit Shah ji when they were going to wave along with Modi ji, when Murli Manohar Joshi ji was sent to the Margdarshak Mandal along with Advani ji, when parliamentary committees vacuum cleaned from Shivraj Singh Chauhan to Nitin Gadkari ji, and when one man suddenly decides, hey, the 70-year-old rule does not apply, so we'll get in a Yedurappa because we know we're going to lose Karnataka arbitrarily into the parliamentary committee. They have no right to preach to the Congress party. The Congress party has an election. Rahul Gandhi is will be the Congress president when that election has happened. And if anyone wants to contest against Rahul Gandhi, may please come and try to contest against him. We will see. May the best man win. Please tell me when is the BJP election. Tell me the date the BJP had an election. The Congress has a process of election. You like or you dislike it. Ghulam Nabi Azad was a part of that election process that selected Rahul Gandhi. And to quote Ghulam Nabi Azad, he can be one of the best Congress presidents in the illustrious history of Congress. This just a few months ago when there were talks of giving him a Rajya Sabha. Now that they have not given him a Rajya Sabha, suddenly the Congress is immature, Rahul Gandhi is immature, he was tearing ordinances.
Okay, opportunism.
10 seconds.
Okay, I want to bring in Mr. Bhatia. Yes, okay, Dr. Ranganathan, yes. 10 seconds.
Yes, no, you know, that Tehseen, very emphatic monologue from Tehseen, and he is, it is within his means to be as disparaging towards Mr. Ghulam as he wishes to. But I have one question for Tehseen. आपने गुलाम नबी आजाद साहब के लिए जो कहना था वो कह दिया, लेकिन जो कल एक और हादसा हुआ मिस्टर शेरगिल का, वो तो आपके बहुत अच्छे दोस्त थे, उनके बारे में क्या कहेंगे? उनके बारे में भी वही कहेंगे जो आप आजाद जी के बारे में कह रहे हैं? Tehseen, writing is on the wall.
I am saying this on TV. Make no mistake about it, and Shergill is a friend of mine. Whether it is Azad Saab or it is Shergill, had Congress won Punjab, nobody would have left Punjab Congress, and had Azad Saab got the Rajya Sabha instead of Imran Pratapgarhi or anybody else, nor would Azad Saab leave Congress. Today Azad Saab is saying that Rahul Gandhi tore the ordinance while he was a minister. Ask Mr. Azad, why was he leader of opposition when the same Rahul Gandhi became president of the Congress? Why did he vote for Rahul Gandhi to become president of the Congress? That happened after him tearing the ordinance, right? So Mr. Azad may please keep his morality to himself and ask us that for a bungalow, if all you want to continue to being continue offer a Rajya Sabha, you want to continue bad mouthing the party that's giving you everything in the family, that shows a lot about you, doesn't show anything about the party. And today Congress is Azad from Ghulam Nabi Azad. Azad is not Azad. Congress is Azad. Good luck to the Congress.
Well, the Congress says he's not Azad because he's already become a remote control in the hands of Prime Minister Modi. That's what the Congress has been saying, viewers. Tweet after tweet. I heard Pawan Khera on television on our station short while back saying exactly this. I can play that out for you, Mr. Bhatia. That's what the Congress is saying today, that he's been modified. That's why he's saying what he is saying. He's probably going to get to launch his party. He's timed his exit ahead of the Kashmir elections, which are putatively going to be held sometime at the end of the year or the beginning of the next. And he will probably, just like Captain Amrinder was, supported by the BJP. And that's really what it's all about. Mr. Bhatia.
Yes. Rahul, I would like to start by saying that before coming to this program, if I had the slightest of optimism that Congress will introspect and recover and will become an opposition which is responsible and constructive, that hope has been dashed by what I heard from Tehseen just now. And I will tell you something which will resonate with the people of the country. When Narendra Modi ji was praising Ghulam Nabi Azad, even though he belonged to the Congress, That was one of the high points of Indian politics. Bipartisan politics, recognizing the contribution of a person who has, even though he is in the opposition, but worked for the betterment of our democracy. And compare this to the lowest point in Indian politics, which is being seen today, that a person who served the Congress for 50 years, just because he could not say yes to everything that the Gandhi Parivar is doing. He is being abused, he is being criticized, and he is being ill-treated, just like Kapil Sibal was meted out with a lot of hatred, disgust by throwing and hurling rotten tomatoes. And the larger point I wish to make, arz kiya hai, because my friend Anand Bhai also was quoting, I will say, dil ke fafole jal uthe सीने के दाग से, दिल के फफोले जल उठे सीने के दाग से, इस घर को आग लग गई घर के चिराग से. This is the story of the Congress. And as a citizen, I want to say this. Rahul, did I interrupt him? Did I interrupt him?
Okay,
That means
let him finish.
it was
Let
an
him finish.
effective one-liner.
Let him finish.
Please. But I think Gadkari ji is saying this.
Rahul, I will raise a very basic point today. Say you, Anand, or me, if we were in politics and under our leadership, the party would have lost 39 elections out of 49, 2 Lok Sabha elections. Also that my attendance in the parliament was 40%. I was caught winking in the parliament. I would have said Chaukidar Chor hai to the elected Prime Minister and then later refused before the Honorable Supreme Court. Do you think any party would give me a second chance? No, they will kick me out. You know, that is why I say it is painful. Narendra Modi ji spoke about the vices of dynastic politics during his Independence Day speech. Now, the larger message was, it is about merit. The best people should come forward and an opposition which can play a constructive role is only possible when the most meritorious out of the party come forward to take the baton. They might oppose us, but it would be good for our democracy.
Okay. Tehseen Punalak, since you're raising your hand, quick response. I want to bring in Sanjay Jha.
The highlight of Indian democracy, as Mr. Gaurav Bhatia ji puts it, was of course the Prime Minister will cry tears because Mr. Ghulam Nabi Azad ji was like the absentee goalkeeper in a goal post, allowing Mr. Modi to score goals. When has Mr. Modi cried tears for Mr. Advani, his mentor, who saved him from being dismissed as Chief Minister? When did he cry for Murli Manohar Joshi? He kicked Nitin Gadkari ji out of the parliamentary board. He kicked Shivraj Singh Chauhan out of the parliamentary board. Arbitrary decisions taken by Mr. Modi, Mr. Amit Shah, who pushed Mr. Nadda away on the terrace. Visual shown by Times Now. When they have all 3 of them are walking to meet the Karyakartas. They are giving lectures to the Congress on how Congress should conduct internal democracy. And the G23 and their friends who are here, for example, my dear friend Sanjay Jha, all of this is only helping the BJP win elections. Only thing is the BJP has to win. That is why this is going on. Please explain to me why
now you are against
today when you have... Today, I'm not against Sanjay Jha. I am saying from all of this is helping the BJP win. Whether it was Ghulam Nabi Azad's performance in Rajya Sabha, whether it is this G23 or whatever's left of them trying to say that this is wrong with the Congress, that is wrong with the Congress, when they authored it. But please, the BJP has the last moral right to preach to any of us. Does Sanjay Jha agree with what the BJP says? How they treated Advani, how they treated Murli Manohar Joshi ji, and they are teaching the Congress how to behave.
Okay, Mr. Bhatia, quick response. I want to bring in Sanjay Jha. Do you have something to say to Tehseen on this point that, look, don't tell us about internal party democracy. You practice what you preach. You learn to respect those who merit, in fact, a position. Very quickly.
Rahul, I just want to tell my friend Tehseen one thing. If you think Congress is doing very well, good luck to you. I would pray that the Gandhi Parivar continues for the next 20-30 years till the time you are completely decimated and you are only read about in the history books. But my point is larger here. You know, Ghulam Nabi Azad made a reference to tearing the ordinance, and that was a very important point. He undermined the authority of the executive, the Prime Minister.
Yeah, but there is a fair point here that Tehseen did make. I don't often agree with him, Mr. Bhatia,
right,
but today I have to concede that it took around 9 years for Mr. Ghulam Nabi Azad, who worked under Rahul Gandhi as LOP, to figure that one out. I mean, that's also a bit rich. So, look, we all know that there is always a degree, and I don't blame.
I am not Ghulam Nabi Azad advocate, but let me say one thing.
So,
just 10 seconds. You know, I am not Ghulam Nabi Azad's lawyer here, but I'll just say one thing. When you have worked for an institution or an organization for 40, 45, 50 years, it takes a lot of time to take these big decisions. It's never very easy for anybody. You've served the party, you've given it your best,
if your
and then,
goes
sometimes
to sleep,
you have to take the decision. It's never an easy decision.
It's better that you don't defend Mr. Ghulam Nabi Azad.
Yeah,
you defend your own
Ghulam
party.
Nabi
I think
Azad
that might be a difficult one. That might be a difficult one. Okay, that might be a difficult one. Anyhow, let me bring in Sanjay Jha. Sanjay Jha, look, Tehseen Poonawalla today is saying you're insider trading, so to speak. The G23 is insider trading now. I don't know what it is, G15, G12, God knows how many are going, how many are staying. But this insider trading is actually the one that is helping the BJP, not the continuation of Rahul Gandhi either as a general secretary or a putative prime ministerial face ahead of the 2024, or as vice president or president. So Sanjay, how do you respond? That you've only added to the BJP's prospects?
Well, Rahul, there is a truism that practically no political party in India has what should be good functional inner democracy. No party has it. And one needs to put it on the table. What's disappointing is that the Congress doesn't incorporate that. Because the Congress is a bit different. It's got a history, it's had some amazing leaders right through the freedom struggle days. And it is a tragedy to see somebody like Ghulam Nabi Azad go. You know, Tehseen is a very dear friend of mine. But to blame the G23 is rather absurd. Because what did the G23 do? All they said was that, guys, we need to fight the BJP. The Congress is capable of doing a lot more, but we are suffering electoral reverses. Can we introduce reforms, bring about elections, become more transparent, elect a leader and get on with the job? How can anybody be critical of a very positive, constructive agenda? To me, that is absolutely atrocious. I think the bottom line is, why are, Rahul, we discussing once again a Congress crisis on your show? And that to me is the biggest worry. At some point, this story must end. But it is not, because the Congress is not biting the bullet on change. And, you know, you have been a very astute political correspondent and editor. And you will know that in any democracy, it's not just the importance of a good opposition. You need a robust opposition. And the Congress is capable of doing a lot more. I'll tell you why I basically have been, you know, very often hypercritical of the Congress leadership and the party, despite the fact that I call myself Congressy by DNA, which is true. I'm putting it on record. I will never join any other political party in India, because I believe the Congress's ideology is extremely rich and compatible with India's constitution. But I worry that Indian politicians in the Congress party seem to be missing the woods for the trees. Tehseen should know that if the Congress party wants to talk about secularism, liberalism, tolerance and inclusivity, you need to win elections. You need to have a very dynamic leader who's leading from the front. You need a very vibrant internal culture. You can't afford to lose talent and say, you know what, they did well when they were here with us, and now they have basically ditched us when we need them. I think that is absolutely a preposterous argument. People give good stuff to the party, which is why the party gives them a position. If you look at Ghulam Nabi Azad, a lot of people don't know this, Rahul. I've had a long conversation with him today. And let me tell you something that a lot of Congress people don't know, that he actually, in 1989, he chose to be in Rajya Sabha because Rajiv Gandhi told all his general secretaries that you do not contest the election because we have a tough election ahead. You don't do the Lok Sabha election. We will accommodate you in the Rajya Sabha when the time permits. He said that I won 4 of my Rajya Sabha nominations. when I didn't have the requisite numbers. I had to create chemistry with the opposition parties. So he said, when the Congress says that they gave me a Rajya Sabha seat, they gave me a nomination, but I won the seat for the Congress party. Now, these are people who are die-hard, ideologically wedded to the pluralism and the Congress of the Gandhi-Nehru period.
That we'll see.
Today,
that we'll see in a few months. If he takes support from the Bharatiya Janata Party to fight his putative election in Jammu and Kashmir, we'll see how die-hard, whatever it is that you've just said. But fair enough, I think, look, it's a point that Sanjay Jha is making, Tehseen, and I want to ask you this because your brother, Shehzad Poonawala, of course, who I'm talking about. You may have sort of, maybe not on talking terms, but you know what he said when he quit the Congress. He said there is no culture of challenging the Gandhis. There is not ever going to be a free and fair election that Sanjay Jha is batting for, or what Mr. Azad is batting for. If you're not a Gandhi, you can't aspire to be the holder of the presidentship and guide the party in the future. So I'm only asking you this question, and I'm going to ask Mr. Chaudhary this question. Will you admit that Rahul Gandhi has some frailties, some problems, or are we all cooking this up here? And the facts that we are presenting are all wrong.
Do you want me to go first, or Mr. Chaudhary?
You are absolutely right.
No, let Mr. Poonawala go first. I'd sort of addressed him, so I'll just come out to you, Mr. Chaudhary. 30 seconds. Yes.
Okay.
In the 136 years history of the Congress, the Gandhi-Nehru family has only been president for 45 years. If anyone wants to contest an election which is monitored by the Election Commission of India, they may contest it against Rahul Gandhi, whoever is the candidate. If you or Mr. Bhatia or Anand or Sanjay join the Congress, they have absolute right to contest an election against anybody. But when did Mr. Nadda contest an election? Which day did Mr. Gadkari contest an election?
At the pleasure of the Gandhis. D.K. Barua
and Mr. Nadda served at the pleasure of RSS.
D.K. Barua showed.
I'd rather serve at the pleasure of Gandhi than the RSS.
Okay, so D.K. Barua showed, he was like O Paneer Selvam. He put the shoes of Indira Gandhi virtually on the chair. He was like O Paneer Selvam.
And Mr. Nadda was pushed away by Mr.
No, one second, sir, one second.
When did they contest an election?
Forget about them.
Give me the date.
Forget about them.
They have no right to teach the Congress.
Okay, so
I will not take moral science lectures from the BJP.
Okay, fair enough. But let's focus on
one point, as Mr. Bhatia spoken about.
One second. You talked about the fact that there have been other presidents.
Neither has my dear friend spoken. They're both speaking the same language.
1 second. You said that there have been other presidents. Of course, there have been other presidents, but they've always served at the pleasure of the Gandhis. In fact, D.K. Barua said Gandhi is India, Indira is India, and India is Indira.
And
that's how wedded he was to the idea of Indira. Forget about the idea of India.
And Venkaiah Naidu ji said Modi is God's gift to India.
Yeah.
Turned out to be a disaster, but that's another matter.
Hang on. That you're talking about the BJP. Why do you want to replicate that? If you think it's so despicable, why do you want to replicate that in your own party?
The BJP is defending Ghulam Nabi Azad.
Dr. Ranganathan is raising his hand, wants a point, and then I'm going to bring in Mr. Chaudhary. Yeah.
Yes, thank you so much. I beg the indulgence of Mr. Kamruji, my good friend, to allow me just 30 seconds because Tehseen has said something which I may rebut. Kamruji, can I please go ahead with your permission?
Yes, please.
Yeah, thank you. Rahul, I don't know how many times I've lost count that I keep reminding my friends in the Congress, as Mr. Sanjay Jha has said and Tehseen has also reiterated, saying that the legacy is of freedom fighters. Tehseen said, we have a 135-year-old history of the Indian national... Bhaiya, your legacy is Indira Gandhi, your legacy is the emergency. In 1969, the real Congress, Indian National Congress, kicked out Indira Gandhi. She split and formed Congress R standing for requisitionists. It was Congress R that proclaimed the emergency. In 1978, no, 1 second. In 1978, the Congress R split again and Indira Gandhi formed Congress I standing for Indira. It was only in 1983 that the Election Commission said, all right, Congress I can be called as INC. So your legacy is Indira Gandhi and the emergency. Your legacy is not Nehru. Your legacy is not Patel. Please.
Okay. That's not true.
Okay. 1 second. Let me bring in Mr. Chaudhary first. He hasn't had a word. He's waited patiently. Mr. Chaudhary, I'm trying to elicit one simple response.
Yeah.
Is Rahul Gandhi driving the Congress into dust? Will you admit at least this much?
Well, Rahul, after listening to the entire part of the debate so far, let me admit very candidly that yes, of course, Rahul Gandhi is responsible for the mess that the Congress party is in. Or do I rephrase it like this, that the mess that the India is right now, how the democracy is in peril right now, the weaker the Congress became, the more weaker the country had become. Now, why I say this, a person who has lost his father to terrorists, who has lost his grandmother to terrorists, he has devoted the entire of his youth and his career till now to the service of the nation, and after thousands of crores being spent by the opposition in making Rahul Gandhi and Pappu, yes, he is responsible for the condition that Rahul Gandhi is in now. Now, when you talk about all these leaders like Ghulam Nabi ji, a stalwart in his own sense, I don't find him a stalwart who has never won a Lok Sabha election, who has never won a Panchayat election. Leave aside that matter, to lead the party, to give a political line to the party against the BJP's pseudo-nationalism, against the BJP's Hindutva line, against the BJP's crony capitalism policies, against the anti-poor policies, anti-farmer policies. You are leading the party. Congress is Ghulam Nabi Azad. And Ghulam Nabi Azad, Kapil Sibal ji, you have not given us a political line. We, the workers of the party, we have also given our 30-35 years to the party. Don't we ask a question of the party? Whom should we ask of? We are asking of you, Mr. Ghulam Nabi Azad. Today that you have sent a letter in the public domain, may I just ask you a simple question, sir? In all these years from 2013 till 2022 that you have been there, you are raising a question of a ordinance being thrown by Rahul Gandhi on 2022. You are a part of those Jaipur Chintan Shivir, where everything was decided about the Bharat Jodo Yatra, and today suddenly after 50 years you did not mention why you are leaving the Congress just because you are an opportunist. I am very afraid to
say,
you're
not going to admit that there is any problem with Rahul Gandhi. He is spotless and he is absolutely unimpeachable. Is that what you're saying? Yes or no?
I can only say one thing, Rahul. Rahul Gandhi ji is after all a human. The way he has led the Congress party, a generational shift is happening now in the thought process, in the structuring of the party. Let us wait and see.
Okay, so very quickly, Sanjay Jha, quick response, and after that I'll go to Mr. Bhatia. Very quick response, Sanjay Jha. Look, you can't grudge Rahul Gandhi. He wants to build the Congress in his own image. He wants to pick the people he can trust, not individuals who perhaps resent his rise. That is the culture, that is where we are at, and therefore you have to accept. That's what Mr. Chaudhary seems to be suggesting. If you don't like it, go out, leave the party, form your own party, etc., etc., test yourselves out. There, it's an open field.
Well, Rahul, I think Mr. Chaudhary is an extremely decent man, but I just need to tell him that, there are times a political party or a corporate company needs to bite the bullet and accept the writing on the wall. And the writing on the wall is that none of the people who have been critical of the Congress or the leadership, Mr. Chaudhary, have any personal agenda. Everyone has been actually standing by the side of the Congress and its leadership through difficult times. The problem is not losing election. The problem, we understand that in politics you can win some, you can lose some. The problem really is when you don't fight back. And I think the Congress's lackadaisical laid-back approach is what is...
Okay, Mr. Poonawalla, and finally Mr. Bhatia, yes.
Yeah, I disagree with my friend Sanjay Jha, because when Sanjay Jha says fight back, we were on the streets getting sticks. We were on the streets getting beaten up. Where was Ghulam Nabi Azad getting beaten up? Which protest was Ghulam Nabi Azad a part of? Where did he campaign in Uttar Pradesh? Where did he campaign in Bihar? We were the ones who spent our money and went to campaign. Please, Sanjay Jha, for one Rajya Sabha, if the same Ghulam Nabi Azad would have given a Rajya Sabha, today he would be sitting here saying there is no better leader than Rahul Gandhi. And that's the problem and hypocrisy we are calling out. Incidentally, Sanjay, with respect to you, and I love you a lot, you and Gaurav Bhatia are not answering on Advani ji. Everyone's answering on everything around the sun, but not on Advani ji, Murli Manohar ji. It's amazing that G23, some of them, and the BJP seem to have the same line.
Okay, Mr. Bhatia, quick response, and then I need to move on.
Now. Just see this picture. It's worth a million words. Narendra Modi ji touching the feet of Lal Krishna Advani ji. But I'll not further waste my time. I think Congress has gone beyond the point of recovery now. They have to sink, and it is very evident when we hear people like Tehseen coming on the show and not even introspecting. I only have one thing to say. Why do you have to refer to Indira Gandhi and the work that she did to establish the credentials of Rahul Gandhi? He has been a parliamentarian for almost 1.5 decades. You have nothing to share with the viewers regarding the good work that Rahul Gandhi has done. And it is so sad, he was in the parliament for almost 10 years and he did not even know the number of seats in the parliament. He said 546. And I will end by saying, लगी है आग अपनी बनियान में, तब भी व्यस्त है भारत जोड़ो अभियान में. भारत जोड़ो बाद में करोगे, पहले कांग्रेस जोड़ो. जो गुलाम नबी आजाद कह रहे हैं राहुल, that is the moot point. And I will only end by saying one more thing. Rahul, if you permit, the time has come. If Rahul Gandhi wants to be the president, there is no issue. But then he should become the president. What is this remote control politics? Even Ghulam Nabi Azad is pointing out that this is remote control politics, power without accountability.
Well, viewers, it's quite clear. If the Congress do believe that he is the future, as Mr. Poonawalla and Mr. Chaudhary and others seem to be suggesting, then Rahul Gandhi needs to immediately come back from his sojourn abroad and take over. And good luck to him, if that's what the Congress wants. I move on, viewers.